Now, the session number 3. It is again my privilege to introduce the chair of this session, Professor Dr. Vijay Khare, Dean, Faculty of Humanities and Director, International Center, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. We call it SPPU. So, Professor Dr. Vijay Khare is a distinguished academic and senior professor who serves as a head of Department of Defense and Strategic Studies at Savitribai Phule University. His areas of expertise include national security, strategic studies, human security, and international relations. He's also a Fulbright Fellow and Erasmus Fellow. Dr. Khare has led several international collaborations and EU-funded projects in the area of higher education internationalization. He has authored numerous books and research papers and has made significant contribution to the development of interdisciplinary programs in national security and public policy. His rich academic experience, international exposure, and leadership in higher education makes him an ideal chair for this session, which is related to data jurisdiction and power, regulating technology in transnational education. May I request, sir, to raise your hand so that we all, thank you so much for coming here. And now we'll start with the presentations. We'll start with the first presentation. May I now call Dr. Sunitra Chatterjee, Assistant Professor, IFIM College, Bangalore. Please come and share your thoughts and ideas with us.
Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sunitra Chatterjee from IFM College, Bengaluru. Today, I'm going to present my paper titled Ensuring Data Security, Privacy and Academic Integrity in Translation and Digital Education Systems. As education is becoming global and digital, new challenges are also increasing. This paper actually focuses on those challenges and possible solutions. Let me explain what translational education means. It refers to academic programs delivered across countries through international partnerships using digital platforms. Today, technologies like learning management systems, cloud platforms, AI-based assessments, and remote proctoring are widely used. These technologies make education more accessible and flexible. However, these developments also create important challenges. This study focuses on 3 major issues. First, data security and the privacy. Institutions collect large amounts of student data which must be protected. Secondly, regulatory compliance. Universities must follow multiple laws such as GDPR, FARPA, and India's DPDP Act. Third, academic integrity. AI tools, online exams, and contract cheating increases the risk of unfair practices. My research objective for this study is to analyze these three challenges and propose a governance framework to ensure secure, ethical, and reliable digital education system. This study also presents a conceptual model. It shows that as technology adoption increases, transnational education grows rapidly. This growth is accelerating. It's not a linear way, but it is its model, I make it like it's y is equal to 0.2x squared plus 1, where x means technological adoption level and y is expansion of the transnational education programs. Here we are seeing that as growth is not only linear part, but it accelerates rapidly with the technology. But although we are doing everything in a growth way and other things, but there is some disadvantages are there. What is that? So when there is a risk model. The risk model is denoted in the digital expansion versus the government's risks. Y equal to 0.8x plus 1 when I apply in my paper. So there x is denoted as a digitalizations level and y is for the governance risk level, where the linear relationship illustrates proportional increase in cybersecurity, privacy, and the integrity risk. So directly convert, like as we are growing digital platforms, we are making digital platform everything, but the risks also will growing simultaneously. Now, in data security risks, we have in the cross-border platforms, we have cloud storage vulnerabilities where student records and assessments data stored across the multiple jurisdictions. Then cross-border data transfers are there where different countries impose verifying that encryptions and security standards. Then unauthorized access threats are there where data breaches happened. Then phishing also happened there. And the last one, academic database also there. We can see some manipulation also being happened where the system manipulation compromising that assessment integrity and that student records. This is that chart where the regulatory complaints complexity happened, where GDPR, which are using in European Union, where the data ownership's individual right is emphasized, and the cross-border rules they are using now strict transfer restrictions, same as USA FARPA is using, and in our India DPDP Act is using. So what we did here, these three framework we are making in a one framework and make it as a very security purpose. I make it as a three-layer governance framework where it will the first layer will start with the technological infrastructure layer. Second one we will use the second layer will be the policy and the regulatory alignment layer, and the third one it will use as a ethical academic governance layer. In first layer we secure that our LMS platform encrypted very much, and but whenever we will use AI, that we have to check that that AI assistant will be perfectly verified and will be threat reduced. Then the second layer, we are using that all that government policies and regulatory layer. So where we are in India, we are using the DPDP. We have to check with whatever the digital platform we are using, there should be that whatever that rules and regulation is there in the DPDP, which started acting as from 2023, all the rules and regulation will be active properly. And the third layer, by ethical academic governance layer, in there, AI ethics policies, plagiarism detection system, transparent assessment, everything we should check properly and we have to be responsible. After using these three layers, see when you saw that the graph was increasing rapidly, and after using these three layers, now the graph, see it's the risk reduction model. So how you see how drastically changes the full mode of the platform. See here I am using the same equations, and where X is the government's integration level and Y is the institution risk level. Simply using some algorithm, simply using some AI mode which will be helpful for the students, which helpful for the prevent manipulation, everything, and we can use in the digital platform, and we can use this TNE appropriately. This graph explains the inverted parabolic relationship shows risk minimization at optimal governance integration. This is the conclusion. This conclusion towards, like, to conclude, translational digital education is growing rapidly across the world. However, it also introduces serious challenges related to data security, privacy, and academic integrity. But we should have that properly seen that the institution must adopt an integrated governance approach that combines technology, regulation, and ethics. This will help create secure, trustworthy, and sustainable digital education system. Lastly, I can conclude with this statement: as education crosses borders, governance must also cross boundaries. Thank you.
We can take questions. Thank you, Dr. Sunitra. Can we have questions? Yes, we can take one or two. One. All right.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. You mentioned this is the plagiarism is also the one part of the discussion which you have talked about. Probably the plagiarism is the nowadays the biggest problem which higher education institution at the India level are facing. As per the study which was published by the Professor Patwardhan, former vice chairman of the UGC, he says that the 33% of the all trash the publication paid publication are from Indian side. So don't you think this is that digital education in the era of the digital education, this number shall also go up? So I feel to think that I'm slightly also wondering this is the how we shall negotiate this the plagiarism issues, which is indeed the rampant on the campuses of the higher education institution, particularly in India.
Sir, I started this just when I saw that like when I saw the brochure and everything. So then I started, and I'm using the simply the two types of datas we are having, right? In I have some Python. We have two types of data. So from there, first we have to select it the appropriate data, first layer. Then we have to go like using algorithm and coding. We can make it, sir. This 3 layers algorithm we can. I have the paper. I can show you that one. I can't explain here, but I am planning to make it as a patent, and then I will go for that. That's it. But we can do.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful presentation. Now we'll move on to the next second presenter, who is Mr. Nasir Rahman Khan, School of Law, St. Joseph's College of Law, Bangalore. He's also a fourth year BLLB student. Please come and share your views and thoughts.
Good afternoon, respected scholars, delegates, and professors. So I present to you my paper, The Jurisdictional Vacuum in Digital Transnational Education, Who Governs a Classroom Which is Everywhere and Nowhere. So as we all know, education is moving across borders through AI systems, digital infrastructures. So who governs the classroom legally? So, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the jurisdictional vacuum. The core idea of my paper is that education has traveled borders without passports, which once required branch campuses, physical presence, identifiable territory, can now happen through platforms, servers, and AI-mediated systems. So the real issue is not making education global anymore, because it already is. The real issue is whether governance can keep up pace with such a classroom which exists across multiple jurisdictions, and sometimes the jurisdictions is not even clear. So the starting point of my paper is the mismatch between the territorial law and borderless technology. So there is a mismatch between the law and the technology. So let us see the anatomy of stateless classroom. So as the visual asks, who governs? So a digital classroom now is not a single space. So a student may be in one country, the university may be in another country, the server in a third country, and the AI procuring tool in a fourth country. So each actor has a role to play, but each can deny its responsibility because they are governed by separate jurisdictions. Why is the structural mismatch? So I have divided it into two categories. First is the traditional paradigm, which we have physical campus, which has clear authority, local regulation, and direct institutional control. And then we have the network paradigm, which says multi-jurisdiction, platform mediation, algorithmic assessment, which creates a fragmented responsibility. So this contrast is important to understand that the problem is structural and not systematic. Because as we know that laws were designed for the jurisdiction, and laws were designed for the location and not the algorithm. So when the digital transnational education consists of multiple locations together, the law starts fragmenting. And how does the law fragments? Because it has various actors. This slide will show how responsibility becomes thinner, as in when the educational process keeps involving various actors. So the university, the online portal, instruction providers, procuring tools, edtech vendors, hosting servers. So there are all the actors have a legal touch point, and every actor may deny responsibility because they all may be governed by different jurisdictions. The problem here is not the absence of law. I say the problem here is the evasion of responsibility. So why do I say that there is no absence of law when I am questioning the legal vacuum? So the vacuum is not absence of law, as I already told. The distinction matters because we are not dealing with complete lawlessness in the pure sense. We are dealing with the overlapping of laws of different jurisdictions, which does not cleanly align with the digital system. So that is the major, deeper problem. So, and the risk is not binary, it's in spectrum, because some systems use moderate risk, but some systems are deeply networked, highly data-driven, heavily depends on multiple legal systems. So this is why we should not treat digital transnational education as another educational system, because when technology, data, and AI comes into the picture, the legal exposure, the level of legal exposure is much higher. So in short, the more borderless the system becomes, the more legally uncertain the system becomes. So I have marked 4 major consequences. First is privacy extradition, cybersecurity fragility, recognition crisis, and algorithmic bias. So these are the 4 problems of this jurisdictional vacuum. So these are not separate problems. They are a problem of a single, they are the product of the jurisdictional vacuum. So what happens? Firstly, algorithmic bias, which sir also mentioned. So what happens when the AI becomes the judge? So I have taken 2 cases, which are the examples where AI-assisted plagiarism detection or automated academic judgment gave a disputed outcomes. So the point is not that machines can make mistakes. They will do. But the point is that students may be judged on a system which they cannot meaningfully challenge. So that is the bigger problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce algorithmic vacuum within the jurisdictional vacuum now, because with that algorithmic vacuum, we get another transnational disaster, which is that one breach can lead to vulnerability, because when data is centralized through digital education systems, a single vulnerability can expose identity records, academic logs, passwords, and even biometric data across multiple jurisdictions. So it can lead to a transnational disaster. And not only this, we have a political problem as well. We have recognition crisis, which is a degree may be internationally recognized, well established from a well established university, but it can still fail regulatory borders due to the territorial laws, because it has nothing to do with the quality of the degree. It has something to do with the sovereignty, because states today want benefit from global education, but they still want to control who gets access, who gets to practice, and who gets the opportunity to practice work in their country, basically. States, while doing so, led to a regulatory patchwork. Now, why do I call it as a patchwork? Because we do have laws, the AI Act, the DPDP Act, the GDPR Act, but they all deal with the similar context which I'm talking about, the algorithming, the data and everything. But when we put it together, they do not form a unified, fully transnational regime. So that is the enforcement gap we see. So I propose a solution. We should stop asking who owns the classroom and start asking who owns which duty of the classroom. So that way, maybe by dividing the duties across the different actors, maybe we can shift from a territorial monopoly to a more coordinated governance model. So I have named that model as the transnational architecture, which will consist as the home state should protect the student rights and recognition standards. The host state should regulate local delivery and consumer-facing activity. The institution should remain responsible for academic quality, assessment, and grievance redress. And finally, the platform and AI provider should carry obligations of transparency, auditability, security, and explainability. Now, I don't ask for a giant global regulator. I propose a structured and layered governance model where accountability and responsibility flows through function, so that when something goes wrong, the system is not left blaming each other. So I conclude my paper. My final claim will be that classrooms have moved on, and unless law learns to travel with the speed of technology, rights will remain fragmented, and the digital classrooms will exist everywhere in practice but nowhere in justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, for this wonderful presentation. Do we have any questions? Yes, sir.
Again, thank you so much for picking up a very pertinent topic in TNE. While I have several questions, but I will restrict to just one. Let's take an example that in a TNE scenario, you are getting into a collaborative agreement with some foreign university and trying to create pathway programs. So question is, in all these scenarios, typically we see that the interest of this home university, that is, let's say in India, and the partner university, let's say outside, they do protect their interest. How about protecting interest of the students? Do we have any governance, or from a TNE perspective, keeping student as the center point, how his or her interest could be protected? Do you want to have a comment? And especially assume a situation when there are third parties coming in and assisting in that entire value chain, situation becomes even difficult. I'll just quote an example before you answer.
Yeah.
I see a situation, I was reading a contract that an university offered some sort of a funding to students, and the contract I read was stating that certain percent of the revenues would be kept by the university. But in that contract, no timeline was defined. In such cases of the illiteracy of the student to understand the contract terms and condition, they might end up in a very tricky situation going forward. Do you have any comment on this?
So exactly, that's what I meant, that students are left challenging an algorithm which they cannot get a meaningfully answer from that. So that's what I marked out. There is a framework patchwork. We do not have a complete framework or law which deals with the entirely transnational regime. They do not deal. I propose a law which consists of regulation which deals with particularly transnational education, so that students' interests are also be respected in that, and legal accountability and responsibility also flows with that. So that's in my view. Maybe we could have a separate framework which deals with the transnational regime.
Yeah, thank you. I do see a lot of gaps. Maybe it's an question for everybody sitting in the
Yeah, yeah,
room that we must keep student as a focal point before we make any decision about TNE.
yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nasir Khan. It was wonderful listening to you. So we have the final presentation before lunch. Dr. Preeti Amresh, Assistant Professor, OP Jindal Global University, a distinguished political scientist, and she has also authored many books in the last decade. Please come, ma'am.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. And it is a privilege to be here in this beautiful campus. And I extend my gratitude to Symbiosis International University for the invitation, and also offer my special thanks to the esteemed Dean, Ms. Neeta, for accepting my proposal. So, talking about the topic, the future of transnational education, blending soft power with tech innovation. Today's world, moves fast. Globalization, tech breakthroughs, changing power, everything feels up the air. So, TNE sits right at the heart of it. Big name universities are reaching across borders, inviting students from all over. This just isn't about opening classrooms. It's loaded with global significance. So the reason TNE thrives, so it's old-fashioned diplomacy, soft power, and of course cutting-edge AI of today, which all play a part. And Joseph Nye, American political scientist, talked about soft power on how countries can win hearts and minds without ever demanding, anything. And in TNE, okay, so in TNE, universities' reputation matters. So does the quality of teaching and whether the graduates, land decent jobs. TNE isn't what it used to be. 20 years ago, students packed their bags and went overseas, to satellite campuses. So now everything is digital. Technology's been at the center of the shift. And soft power plays a big role too. And what happens next in higher education, hinges on how universities how universities use virtual connections to grow globally, all while making sure, their academic standards, stay intact. So, what's the impact of soft power globally? Soft power sits at the heart of TNE. So, nations that lead in research and teaching, build international networks of ideas and influence. Take the UK and the US, for instance, by welcoming global students and, setting up branch campuses overseas as well. They strengthen their diplomatic ties, and also foster goodwill. And these campuses often try to bring Western academic, values into countries with those ideas that aren't, yet dominant. So the TNE in India looks ready for a breakthrough. The country's rich culture draws in students from around the world, and its push for tech innovation is reshaping how classrooms, how learning happens. And Indian universities use online platforms and also virtual classrooms to connect with global students and make the education even more accessible. And this blend of heritage and tech doesn't just welcome people in, it builds strong global partnerships and also encourages, knowledge sharing. And if India keeps focusing on quality and creates a supportive environment, it'll stand out as a global education leader. And that's how India, boosts its influence and soft power by turning classrooms into gateways of global cooperation. So, how would technology spark economic growth? Soft power, soft power shapes the way we approach TNE. It inspires global connections and collaborations. Tech, on the other side, really gets things moving. And hybrid learning, has opened up education to millions, tearing down old barriers. And without AI and machine learning, we are looking at personalized learning that big lecture halls could not deliver. And now universities award top-notch degrees to students who never set foot abroad. And virtual exchange brings students from every corner together online, cutting out the headache of travel and visa paperwork. Also blockchain backs up student credentials and keeping records safe and verifiable no matter where you are. And the real challenge for schools, making sure all these innovations build a more inclusive academic community where everyone feels they belong. So what are the challenges here, and some ethical guidelines regarding this? The intersection of tech and soft power is not without its complexities. There are valid concerns regarding data privacy and digital inequality, and also potential for educational neocolonialism. When institutions, export their curriculum, they must remain cautious and vigilant, about the cultural biases embedded within their teaching materials. Furthermore, you see that the reliance on digital infrastructure, exposes educational providers to risk, related to cybersecurity and platform dependency. And to succeed in the coming years, TNE, providers must adopt a governance framework that prioritizes the ethical use of tech and also protection of the students' data. So this requires a balanced approach where tech progress is tempered by a commitment to academic freedom and also equitable access. So, what are the final reflections? TNE is heading towards a smart mix of cultural influence as well as digital innovation. So, as populations shift and more students, in emerging economies, seek higher education, universities need to break free from old models, like branch campuses, and embrace, modern digital solutions. And when schools use cutting edge platforms to offer like real high quality learning experience, they don't just expand their reach. They give students around the world genuine chances to grow and also connect. So success here isn't only about tech. It's about lining up the educational goals with broader cultural as well as diplomatic partnership, with knowledge as the bridge, linking people across borders. And this new blend of culture and also tech is about more than access. So it's transforming what global academia means as a whole, and making learning easier to share, more welcoming, and also more powerful than it has ever been before. Thank you.
Just wanted to understand how you're making. I mean, there is a lot of academic literature on transnational education and soft power. With a background in international relations, I actually don't agree with it completely because when we look at soft power is never transactional in nature. So, Fulbright scholarship, an Erasmus grant, those would count as soft power. But minute we are talking about TNE and there is a space for a transaction, would you not say? I mean, you mentioned Joseph Nye that it moves more towards maybe to a certain extent smart power, but not as hard as smart power. What I would say would be more like a do commerce or a gentle commerce. Your thoughts on it?
So when you talk about education, in my opinion, it comes under soft power because when I worked on my doctoral thesis like years ago, I did add education as part of soft power, because when you clearly talk about soft power, it's about culture, education, and various other cultural aspects that come in. And Joseph Nye, clearly mentions in his book, what is soft power, what is hard power. So that's the way it is. And you asked something else, about. Right.
Is it not more towards gentle commerce or do commerce rather than pure soft power?
Okay, so it does come under, economic partnership, economic diplomacy as well, and as well as soft power diplomacy. So, education comes under economy as well for any country. Say, if US is having a diplomatic relationship with India, and they want to do educational exchanges. So even this comes into picture, soft power along with economy. And economy, to an extent, is also part of soft power, though people actually, club it with hard power as well. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Preeti. It was a wonderful presentation. You touched many points about technology, economic growth, ethics, etc. May I now humbly request the chair of this session, Professor Dr. Khare, to share your thoughts and ideas.
Thank you, Inamdarji Madam. Give a round of applause for all three presenters. They have done excellent justice to the topic. In fact, this is first kind of topic in TNE where they talked about that data, jurisdiction, power, and regulating technologies. This is really wonderful, and they tried to give a justice. Let me congratulate again all presenters. In fact, TNE, what Madam says about the soft power, if you look back the history, after the First World War, victory state come out with the League of Nations. The idea was the collective security system can be developed at international security environment. Then the founder of Columbia University, he came up with the institution, International Institute of Education. That was the first kind of soft power they used as an education. And then they started the Fulbright Fellowship program. Then in 1925, British Council came. Then in the European part, European Commission, or before that, the Erasmus Mundus and European Commission started the new initiative through the soft power. And then the Australian government and New Zealand and now another government floated the fellowships. In fact, Government of India also using the soft power by sponsoring 8,000 fellowship in the name of ICCR scholars. We call it Indian Culture Relations. So this is the beauty of soft power. Coming to the point, let me take back what three presenters make it point and what we need to critical analyze. There is a triad, particularly. We can call it a strategic triangle where data controls the knowledge flows, power who shapes the future of education, and jurisdiction, what is legal authority. When we talked about digital classroom, is no longer a physical space, it is an algorithmic, cloud-based ecosystem that challenges the sovereignty of nation state, that challenges the pedagogy, that challenges the governance. And this is a real challenge where a country like India, where most of the massification of education comes through the state-funded universities. When we talked about digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, it talks about the cross-border data flows in LMS platforms, because LMS after COVID, each even state-funded university also started the LMS. AI-based assessment and plagiarism and data ownership, student versus institution versus platforms. So who controls, whether institution, whether student, or whether platforms? That is a question mark, particularly when we talked about that. Then who owns the student learning data in a cross-border digital classroom? That is a question, particularly who will get the rights? Can academic integrity survive AI-driven content generated tools? Or should India mandate data localization for transnational education? When we talked about the classroom without challenges, the Western second speaker talks about the sovereignty, and we need to understand the Western failure notion of sovereignty. And here, which laws applies to whom? What laws we are going to apply to whom? Whether the laws applies to the country of the student, whether laws applies to the institutions, whether laws apply to the server location, and what are the dispute resolution mechanism in transnational education. The question is, can we imagine a global regulatory body for digital education? Now, this is right time to understand, to have it some kind of mechanism. Can we imagine a global regulatory body of digital education? How do we ensure accountability in a placeless classroom? Because while sitting at home and we are learning, so what kind of accountability we needed? And is TNE creating new form of digital colonialism? Because again, now in earlier session, one speaker talked about that. But through this new imperialism or colonialism, what would be the challenges for us? That is, we need to raise this point. Then the soft power, the third paper presenter talks about the soft power strategy. What is India using the soft power in NEP 2020? Let me share that from last 15 years, I am handling the international center where I have enrolled more than 15,000 international students. I am the only person in a country where this number has enrolled in more than 15,000. And I have generated more than 60 crore revenue from internationalization. But if you come with the reality, the 15,000 international students from 107 countries. But out of that, 27% students are from Nepal and Bangladesh and nearby countries. And hardly I have received any student from Western country who come for the scientific degree. So these are the challenges for Indian institutions, Indian universities to come out with the TNE. It is very easy for increase the number. I'm not saying the student who come from Nepal or Bangladesh, they are not good. When they come, in particular from Middle East or Africa, there is a cultural shock for them. And now for us, we need to make it the ecosystem where institution can play important role. They are very good student. One of my student, Wali, he was my student. He did it with me, graduation. Now I'm very happy that he is here as a leader in a Symbiosis. So they are all ambassadors in 107 countries. But here now, the TNA, there is a different strategy we require to understand the TNE process. Now, TNE particular talks about a tool of diplomacy. You can use it, that tool of influence, cultural influence, and take platform of a new education empires. Now, this is again, I said, new education empires can become a colonialism, but at the same time, education empire you can create. Now, question is, can India leverage TNE like the US, UK as an instrument of soft power? Here is the main problem, and I said, well, that's why I gave an example. Now, the kind of efforts US and UK making to attract Indian students, their first market. Every week I am receiving the delegation from US, UK, and they are coming with the proposal, but their main target is to identify the good brain from Indian institutions, including Savitribai Phule University Symbiosis. So here is the question where we are going towards in a TNE, and particularly how we should go it. That's number one. Then tech platforms become a new geopolitical actors. Now look at all tech platforms. Morning session, Professor Saab rightly pointed out that, transactional knowledge production and transactional system. If you talked about a professional way in a TNE, then there will be what we thought that there is need to social justice and the massification of higher education. But this new edtech forms, they are just thinking about how to get the money, and probably they will create another geopolitical actors in different way. Then is technology dependency shaping educational dependency? This question can come. Now, last point I want to give a message from this session. What we are witnessing is not just the globalization of education, but the platformization of knowledge, where control shifts from university to digital infrastructure. And this is the real new question is coming in higher education. Symbiosis is a pioneer of internationalization, where Savitribai Phule University and Symbiosis playing important role for internationalization. But there are the challenges of Indian university, particularly regulatory rigidity versus global competition. Although we talked about the TNE, students are international, but rules or laws are nationals. And there is a questions. There are the questions, and I'll give one example. One of my student, Bangladesh girl, some of the delivery, the Swiggy boy, made a comment, and she filed a case, police case, and there was an issue came. And then which law, whether the posh law is applicable to her. There was a lot of discussion, So the international student comes, then issue comes. So this is the problem, we are talking about the internationalization, TNE, but when we are talking about the student, then laws, which laws are applicable? These are the issues we need to have it, and that's why regulatory rigidity versus global competition we need to focus. Need for digital infrastructure, particularly a country like India. We cannot come and sit in ivory tower and talk about massification of higher education. Think about the state universities, where state can play important role for TNE, and for that we need to develop that ecosystem, and balancing autonomy versus compliance. These are the few issues. Now, in need for global governance framework for TNE is important, but at the same time, data sovereignty must align with academic openness. India must transition from participant to leader of TNE subject to what kind of policy is going to implement in due course of time. So with this, my comments, I'm very happy that all my three presenters, although there are some issues, the compilation of data and other things need to be proper correction, proper citation, but when they are going to revisit this paper, kindly publish it. This is one important topic in TNE where this paper can play important, means give a guidelines for the policymakers. With these words, I'm concluding this. We all are hungry, so this delicious lunch is waiting for us. So any question, any comments for me, you can ask me, but I'm very happy for chairing this session. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Khare, sir. You can stay back. May I request Dr. Shweta Deshpande, Director, Symbiosis School of Liberal Arts, to felicitate Professor Khare with a token of appreciation. And meanwhile, I also request all the presenters to come for a group photograph.